Image, because yours is important. My name's Mike Heath, and I am the leader of Helping Hands Ministries, and it's my privilege to host Americans for Truth Live today. And I want to welcome you to the show, either to the live show if you're watching at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, or to the archive on the AmericansForTruth.com website. And behind me here, you can see the donate page of the website. And I want to let you know that Americans for Truth, run by Peter LaBarbera, is a nonprofit. It does receive donations, and I encourage you to support Peter. He needs your financial support as well as your prayers, and he also, of course, deserves them more than you know. And today, I want to go somewhere. I'm hoping to go somewhere. I've been thinking and praying about the show most of the morning. I learned yesterday that I would be hosting the show because Peter is on his way to Washington, D.C., and so he could not do it today. So he asked me to be here, and I'm excited to be here. But I want to preface this show by saying that I'm not a theologian. I have a Bachelor of Arts degree in philosophy. I'm going to try to make some points, try to take you somewhere today that could. I'm going to say a prayer right now because I really want to help you understand something that I think I understand. So, Lord, thank you for Americans for Truth. Thank you for Peter. Thank you for the opportunity to produce this show. I pray that your Holy Spirit would go before my brain and help me to make the point that I want to make well. Amen. So, about 30 or so years ago, I thought up this phrase that I opened the show with: image, because yours is important. I came up with that phrase because I was working for a man named Jack Wyman. He was the leader of the Christian Civic League of Maine at the time, and he is the man who gave me my start in politics, and he introduced me to the Maine State House, and he helped me to learn so much about what I felt then and feel now I should have learned in school about the government. I mean, when I started at the Christian Civic League of Maine, I didn't even know what the three separate powers of our government were, why we had the separation of powers. I mean, something as fundamental as that in my mid to late 20s. I should have learned that when I was in high school, but I didn't. Jack Wyman introduced me to those things, and he was very conscious of how he said the things he said and how he wrote the things he said. He was very conscious about how he presented himself, very aware of how people were reading him and hearing what he had to say, and that is important. And so as I worked with him for 4 years, we talked a lot about what was important and how we could help other people, and I came up with this thing: image, because yours is important. Jared's going to throw up Isaiah chapter 28 on the screen here, and I want to go through these verses quickly. Therefore, thus saith the Lord God, behold, I lay in Zion for a foundation, a stone, a tried stone, a precious cornerstone, a sure foundation. Now, when I hear that, because I'm a Christian, I think of Jesus Christ as being that sure stone. There's a New Testament verse which talks about him being the cornerstone in Zion, I believe. So Jesus is that foundation. And Jesus, John tells us in the first verse of his gospel, is the Logos, which is translated into the English as the Word. He's not the image. He's the Word. Or to expand that idea out a little bit, Jesus is reason, not a picture, not an image. He's reason. Continuing on, he's a sure foundation, a precious cornerstone. He's something solid. He that believeth shall not make haste. He that believeth in this foundation, this spiritual foundation that we Christians believe is Jesus, the Logos or reason, if we believe, we're not going to make haste. We're not going to hurry. We're not going to be rushing around. Boy, that's something that could preach right here in our day and age with our smartphones and our constant interruptions and notifications. Yeah, we should. He that believeth in this foundation isn't going to rush, but I don't want to go there today. Judgment also will I lay to the line, and righteousness to the plummet, and the hail shall sweep away the refuge of lies, and the waters shall overflow the hiding place. I'm going to suggest today that there's a lot of hiding going on, and that there's a lot of lying going on, and there's a refuge of lies that many good thinking people are heading into or hiding in. And your covenant with death shall be disannulled, and your agreement with hell shall not stand. When the overflowing scourge shall pass through, then ye shall be trodden down by it. Now, I think Isaiah is talking here about judgment, and I think that we could suggest here your covenant with death. There is a covenant with death that we have been making in the United States for decades now. We think of the abortion issue that's now expanding out to early and often drug use being encouraged as a way to deal with our psychological and emotional challenges, and it leads to premature death in the experience of many people, in the lives of many people. So there's a lot of death entering in, the acceptance of death, which is probably not a good thing for our society. And your agreement with hell shall not stand. We're seeing that as well. We're seeing in the movies and in music, we see this embrace of death and the occult symbols and hell. So image, because yours is important. And at that same time, during those 4 years that I worked at the Christian Civic League of Maine as the associate director, we published a paper that gained national attention called Better Choices, a Post-Roe Agenda. Better Choices, a Post-Roe Agenda. And what the idea there in that paper was that we at the Christian Civic League were going to help the world move beyond this controversy over abortion by suggesting better choices, a post-Roe agenda. And what we suggested is that we needed to be compassionate towards women. And it drew a lot of fire because of when it was introduced. Some of the points made were okay, but now looking back, I think the paper was influenced. The position was influenced too much by wanting people to take us seriously, because it didn't include a realistic pursuit of God's judgment on a nation that chooses death, like I just read from the scripture. So Better Choices, a post-Roe agenda happened at that time. And that's when I met Bob Knight for the first time, a hero of mine. And Bob called me and talked to me. I was the associate director, and he challenged me on this point of God judging forces in the world that make bad choices, and that we weren't clear in the paper that abortion is a really bad and evil choice. And Bob really got to the point, challenged me. I heard it. I thought about it. And Bob was Peter LaBarbera's boss at the time, Peter, the host of this program. This was about 30 years ago. And so that's how I met Peter, was through Bob. And Bob challenged me to think of this whole need to address abortion and to help the world address abortion as needing a more rational and less sort of image-driven approach in our thinking. And I'm really grateful to Bob for doing that. all those years ago, and I've never forgotten it, and it's really helped me. It's really stuck with me. Now, Jared, bring up that CPAC article. I want to read the beginning of this article, and then I'm going to show you a video real quick. I just want to read down through this. This was just published. Of course, CPAC had its big meeting last week. Last weekend was CPAC, the annual convention for the professional right to show off their new wares for the coming year. In theory, it's a gathering of grassroots activists, conservative politicians, and conservative media to socialize, network, and strategize about how to defeat the left. This was true in the early days, but somewhere in the 1990s, it became a trade show for conservative Inc. The people living off politics and the people who hope to live off politics use it as a way to network and showcase their talents. Just as conservative Inc. has become a grotesque mockery of itself, CPAC is something closer to a clown show than a real political event. The organizers have given up pretending to be conservative. Instead, they are going for something like an award show. They actually invited a clown this year. It's proof that the official right is now Trump's world, which is a blend of reality TV and professional wrestling. There's lots of drama, all of it choreographed, but in the end, nothing actually happens. It's just a show. Play the clip, Jared. Play the next clip, the YouTube clip.
Good morning, Patriots.
Can you go back to the beginning?
Good morning, Patriots. Good morning, rebels. Did you ever dream that you'd see the day that it would be an act of rebellion because you want to make America great again? Because you want to keep America great? You know what's amazing right now is God is picking rebels and putting them in positions of power right now. We have the greatest rebel in the world running this country right now. I think since the day I could talk, I've always been a rebel. From as far back as I can remember, I've always felt a great compulsion to defend the underdog, to befriend the outcasts, to not worry my head too much about the need to fit in. I didn't know then how these qualities would end up one day informing my decision to start what has now become a cultural and political phenomenon. Behind every great rebel is a mind that sees the world not just for what it is, but for what it could and should be. To never accept the status quo. Certainly not because it's the easy thing to do. It's the driving passion for change that tells the rebel to disrupt the establishment and to never, ever take no for an answer. It is the need to always be true to one's core values and oneself, to always think independently. Growing up gay in the 80s and 90s in a Catholic Nebraska farm community.
Okay, Peter.
Being an independent thinker.
I'm Peter, sorry. Jared, go back to that CPAC article, would you? Pull that up again. Okay. Just as conservative Inc. has become a grotesque mockery of itself, CPAC is something closer to a clown show rather than a real political event. The organizers have given up pretending to be conservative. Instead, they're going for something like an award show. They invited a clown. I don't think this article was referring to that clown we just watched, but yeah, I guess they invited more than one clown this year. It's proof that the official right is now Trump's world, which is a blend of reality TV, professional. There's lots of drama, all of it choreographed, but in the end, nothing actually happens. It's just a show. Image, because yours is important. What's being done here, what's happening here, is that we are giving up on reason. Our passions are getting the better of us. Our passions are appealed to easily by pictures, by images, whereas reason is something that we have to wrap our minds around. We have to think about reason. The Greeks had a great image, which I like to talk about as often as I can, of a horse on a rider with a bridle, and think of the bit in the horse's mouth. The horse is reason. The rider is reason. And the bridle with the bit in the mouth is the will, and the horse is the passions. And what's happening to us in the West is the horse is running wild. It's almost like either the horse is on top of us, the rider, or there is no riders. It feels like the horse, the passions are running wild, and there's no will to rein it in. And this is happening, I think, because in part, or what I want to say is that the evidence for this we see in the clip of this man. I don't even know what his name is. I don't follow his stuff probably as closely as I should, but apparently he's the leader of some hashtag movement. I think it's called Walk Away. But the big takeaway from this is big conservative pushing to the front of the line, pushing into public view a homosexual who's really proud about it, and who is playing to our sense in the United States of being a rebel, being independent thinkers, because we revolted against England, and so it's sort of in our DNA to be rebels. And so he's kind of appealing to that, and he's doing it as a person who is really not at all interested in what God has to say about sex and marriage and family formation and the importance, especially the long-term importance of marriage as a civil institution. Important because it creates that legal boundary or womb, if you will, the legal and civil sort of womb that protects a couple, that protects two people, has to be a man and a woman in order to get to the next step. It can't be two men or two women, which is to have children, and then eventually to have grandchildren, and therefore have a family, which is foundationally a biological fact, a man and a woman. And marriage as a civil and a religious institution has complemented that and strengthened that historically. But now, of course, that's no longer true, because there is no legal protection. There really isn't any civil marriage anymore that makes any sense, not since the Supreme Court decision of 2015, Obergefell. That's when it all went away in the United States. We don't have civil marriage in our country anymore. But I'm off on a rabbit trail. I think part of the solution, this is the point that I really want to make today, and it looks like I am going to be able to get to it. And I'm so glad. I'm kind of new to this hosting and doing it in a 30-minute format and stuff. So thanks for bearing with me and listening and praying for me as I do this. I want to show you a clip from yesterday's Americans for Truth show. But before I do, I want to set it up. Peter and I, as I said at the beginning of the show, have known one another for 30 years. I was introduced to him by Bob Knight. And Peter is a very positive and funny in an extraordinary way. He's quick-witted and hilarious. And I've known this for 30 years. But if you followed him in the media and he has done thousands of media interviews over the years on this controversial issue, you probably don't know that. You have to get really close to Peter personally to know how warm, positive, you see the positive side of his character. That comes out very, very clearly all the time. But you have to get really, really close to see his warmth as a man, his love, his compassion. That comes through too. You know, the compassion certainly comes through in everything. But his wit and his humor, his sense of humor, has always helped me. It has sustained me in this fight down through the years. We've been trying to tell the truth on this issue for 3 decades, and it's been a tough slog. I mean, it's nothing like what Jesus went through, right? I mean, he says we're supposed to take up our cross every day, and we're supposed to carry it, and supposed to have joy while we're carrying it. So, and look at what happened to all the apostles as far as suffering goes. I mean, Christianity is a religion that is very robust in providing a narrative that a human being can enter into that can give them strength in times of suffering, when they're going through times through pain or experiencing surprises that overwhelm them. Christianity is very powerful. It's a very powerful force in that regard. But Peter has been, in addition to Christ in my life, a sustaining force through his sense of humor. And so I've been encouraging him to let that out. And yesterday he was really bold. He called me early in the morning. He said, I woke up early and I've got this idea. And he was playing off of the Jussie Smollett recent hate crime hoax. There's been a number of them, as we talked about on the show yesterday. And he developed during the morning, just yesterday morning, very quickly, he developed this parody, this satirical sequence in his mind. And we aired it yesterday, and we were a little nervous. He was very nervous because Peter is a trained journalist. He's a professional. He's on his way to Washington, D.C. with materials, documentation. He's a journalist, right? So he documents everything. And he's on his way to Washington, D.C. with documentary evidence of what has been done over the last 50 years in the United States on this issue. He's collected it, he's organized it, it informs the show, it informs his writing, it informs his work, and so he's a serious thinking man on this issue. He's dedicated himself to this issue like a journalist. And I've always said to him, Peter, because of his sense of humor, this is the thing we need on this issue, is a sense of humor. Why is it that the other side, through late night comedy mostly, is so effective in a political and cultural sense with the use of satire aimed at us, but we never even talk about it. We never even think about being satirical. And so Peter and I have been thinking about it. Now, I'm going to show you the portion of this where I think we broke character, and it kind of revealed that we're not comedians. Neither one of us. I was playing the straight guy, and Peter was playing the victim here. And so he said he went to Burger King 2 a.m. and then he had bought his Whopper and his soda, and he is surprised by 3 men who jump him, and that's where we join the narrative here, and we're just going to play a couple minutes of it. So go ahead, Jared.
Life, this Whopper.
Really?
Well, because believe it or not, what happened? I'm walking away from the BK. I got my Whopper in hand, and I got my Coke, my cell phone. Can't remember. I might have been talking to somebody at the time too, and
Mhm.
and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, these three guys came out.
Whoa,
with
what's that about?
with
What?
baseball bats.
Baseball bat? What?
Baseball
Three guys?
with baseball bats, and one was a wiffle ball bat, which is really strange. and they started beating on me with these baseball bats, and they look remarkably like the baseball bats my sons use in Little League.
What is that on that? What's that on the bats? What is that?
It looks like blood.
Oh my goodness! Blood.
Smells like ketchup. Anyways, and they started beating on me, and needless to say, I was trying to take the blows from the wiffle ball bat, because that was far more easy on the skull than the aluminum bats. And so since I had the Whopper in hand, I held it up. I held it up like this. And this Whopper and these fries, and I never liked Burger King fries as much as McDonald's fries, but I'll eat them anyway. I'll
Okay, Jared,
always McDonald's fries.
So you get the idea, right? I mean, neither one of us are comedians, and comedy is, I've read, one of the hardest forms of communication to pull off well. So I want to commend Peter for creating this YouTube, which is on his website and anybody in the world can view. I think it was really gutsy of this professional journalist to do what he did yesterday. And I encourage you to go watch the show, because it is funny, and we do need to think about this whole phenomenon of these fake hate crimes, which go back. Well, Peter talked about it yesterday. They go back to the founders of this idea that homosexuality should be equal to heterosexuality, and that we should just not talk about the morality of it at all. So this has been a component of their propaganda, and it really deserves attention. Go ahead, Jared, put up that quote, the next visual. This is from Doug Wilson's book entitled The Serrated Edge, and he has produced for years something, Credenda. I'm not sure what the name of it is, but I read his book years ago, and it informed my thinking about comedy and about especially about satire. And this is what he wrote: "The learned and respectable among us have agreed to abandon the use of satire, leaving this particular form of abuse to the buffooneries of late-night comedians. Our academicized scholars have gravitated to respectable discourse along with other forms of surrender, Profound point here. I think the point he's making is that we have become so high-minded in our thinking that we're actually totally ineffective, and perhaps in our high-mindedness have become low-minded, because he closes this quote by saying that it's a form of surrender. This idea of scholarship that excludes the use of satire to make points to the public, to influence people, to persuade them, to help them to think. We need to take this back. It's not going to be easy, because the folks who are promoting this death culture have caused us to think that if we become satirical, or if we laugh at them, then we're being mean. And many people in the public feel the same way. They've been persuaded to think that if a Christian does anything other than take them seriously and act nice when they bring up their victimhood and when they talk about whatever, if we dare to laugh or come up with something that is a joke at their expense, which they do to us all the time, then we're not going to be helpful or effective. So I'm proud of Peter for what he did yesterday, and I hope he does more of it, and we all need to do more of it. We don't we all need to laugh more when it comes to this issue, I think. And it's not because we hate people. That's not it. So thanks for tuning in today to Americans for Truth Live. I hope I got my point out. I feel like it's sort of I haven't heard a lot of people make this point. So Americans for Truth Live, go to americansfortruth.com, click that blue donate button, and let us know that you want this to continue. God bless you.